Hello, good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain. So,
Indeed. Well, I say we always thank God for each new day, but we thank Him more when it's Friday. Good morning and welcome. It's a Friday morning right here in Lagos. I was going to say Lagos, Nigeria.
what's going on here? Is this the effect of Fridays or what? Okay, change it back to Thursday, please.
No. You can't go back to Thursday. Thankfully, it's Friday. That's what it is. And we're right here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory of Nigeria. Good morning and welcome. I'm Malcolm Yusuf.
The error is understandable, Chamberlain. She's a Lagosian at heart, so your heart must always play out. It's the 27th day in the month of October.
Oh,
Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, yes, indeed. Much as all of the drama has gone down yesterday. So, of course, we expect lots of people to look forward, which naturally we'll talk about some of those matters. But several other matters, because, governance cannot be put on hold. One key area is because, look, we've gone through some of the items, the policies, the policy thrust of government, which they spoke about at the NESG. We're still trying to understand what they meant by we've achieved the aim of subsidy removal, because the impact is not what a lot of people thought about it. But one key area is that several other people think needs to get a lot of attention. In fact, they think it should be number one, because naturally they say, look, if you want to embark on any of those projects in this part of the world and you don't have electricity, how far can we go, really? So that's why we keep looking to see what plans do the ministry or minister of power have to move the country forward. Incidentally, I'm not sure I missed it, or didn't he speak about it, the president, at that NESG, because all of his plans and focus, the government's plans and focus, I don't think they can make much headway without addressing that particular department or ministry, electricity. And as a matter of fact, because both the manufacturers themselves have spoken up consistently about how they think we need to pay a lot of attention. So even if we give a lot of palliatives or tax relief, which we expect for several departments across board, as a matter of fact, that diesel that a lot of companies and organizations spend a lot of money on, if it's addressed, it can go a very long way. And then petrol, the same thing. So yes, while they should be expected to begin to move forward now without any, maybe I should use the word encumbrances, now that this hurdle is over. Of course, we know that they say no excuses initially, but now it's all the more so now. So both ministries, departments, and agencies, everybody's watching.
All the while Chamberlain was speaking, all that was playing in my head was this song that started with something around electricity. And I was like, oh, it's a Friday, That's all that's been in my head. I'm not even sure I know the song properly, but I think it starts with electricity. And I'm sure, Gen Zs will know what I'm talking about. And it's Friday, end of the month at that, when you get paid. So who knows what we'll be dancing to today. But I think that this week, we did see some movement, I think was with the Nigerian Governors Forum, because before the Buhari administration left office, we saw that there were a slew of constitutional reforms that were passed into law, and one of them was removing electricity from the exclusive list and putting it on the concurrent list. So right now, states have as much say and power as the federal government does with regards to generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity. And because, we always make reference to it on this program, people live in states. Majority of people, if not all of the people, live in states, not the Federal Capital Territory. The first people who, if they do make an impact, if they're able to make a dent in that sector, the people who will feel it first will be the people who live in the states where they're able to have the effect. I think we saw a meeting with some private investors, those who are also interested in enabling the states get on board. I'm not very certain now, but I thought we saw them come from the European Union seeking to partner with states to see how they can get electricity off the ground, I mean, up and running in those states. So we saw them at the Nigeria Governors Forum having a conversation with some of the governors that were present at that meeting. And it'll be very interesting to see, Chamberlain, because much as people always like to focus on the kinds of things that they can see, the kinds of infrastructure, immediate infrastructure that they can see. Don't forget that governors have 4 years. And sometimes some people say it's even less than 4, given all of the time that, you know, you must be politicking before, if you're going to be renewing your tenure or if you're going to be out of office. Some people say it's about 3, roughly. And that's as if you're lucky not to be in court for litigation after an election. I mean, right now, look at when we just got the verdict on the Supreme Court judgment. So,
and then the governors, some of them, is not yet concluded.
Oh, yes. For a number of governors, it's not yet concluded. Some of them are just going to appeal.
Yeah.
And there's still Supreme Court. So, so for the governorship, it does take quite a bit. But a lot of the projects, a lot of the infrastructure that we need to get our economy going are long-term investments. And we want to see will. We want to see at least a start in that regard. We've seen a few states, I think Kaduna State has, is showing that they want to move in that direction in terms of investing in electricity and seeing how they can get that sector going. I've seen, I think, Ogun State, Lagos. Before now, Lagos had done all manner of experiments in terms of trying to, at least get government infrastructure powered through some alternative means. Now that states now have full leeway, how much more can they achieve? And a number of other states, I think even Abia State, I'm not very certain what the arrangement was, but in the places where you have manufacturing already ongoing, is it possible for us, because some people will say that this is how we should target whatever gains it is that we make from subsidy. Because what we do know that as a result of the fact that Nigerians are now paying more, are bearing the burden of their own fuel consumption, there is so much more accruing to the Federation account, and these monies are going to the state government. So while it is that they're trying to, talk about palliatives is just the barest minimum, and that's just to make life easier for people who are really, 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 really vulnerable. I do not know how much progress a lot of states have made in that regard. The real place where everyone will feel this palliative or the effect of subsidy removal and appreciate some gains in it will be in the area of electricity, in the area of energy. I mean, if also we're looking to the CNG buses, there are also buses that run on electricity, and if we're looking to invest in the transport sector, that might be something
gas component.
Well, there's a gas component, yes, but there's also, there are also vehicles now that run on
electric vehicles.
Yes, electric vehicles. There are also battery-powered, vehicles as well. People will say, battery-powered vehicles. Where's the infrastructure for that in Nigeria? If you drive from one place to another, where are you going to plug your vehicle to charge it? But these are possibilities, and really nothing should be. If you really set your mind to something, you really can achieve it. I'm sure the governors know that, and they didn't get to their positions by accident. So I let us hope. What can we do? We can only hope. The conversations which they were having gave us reason to hope. But how they move from that, how they move from the conversations to implementation, to ensuring that people actually reap the benefits of this in good time, what their plan for it will be something that I'm sure a lot of Nigerians will be interested in. Are they going to be looking for local investors? Are they going to be looking for how maybe people in the state where these, assuming it is something very heavy that the state cannot bear, are they going to be looking for people to buy into this particular plans, because these are things that on the long term would be profitable to not just the state government, but to even everyone within the state, and will incentivize people to also pay their electricity tariff as and when due. So it's a big opportunity. It's a big job of work, but it's not one that is insurmountable. It's not one that is impossible. And it will be good to see how that conversation moves from the room to the town. Ayo.
Economy, Maokwe, if properly structured and properly executed, properly practiced, the systems are doing right, a good number of people will also remind you that electricity business or energy business generally is quite a lucrative one. Let me begin from where you started the other time, talking about that song, Electricity. First of all, it's a song done by Fields featuring Davido. Secondly, Maokwe, that song has nothing to do with electricity itself, but it starts with that. It's just essentially talking about, energy and what happens when, two people meet, the rest of the deal. But that's not the only song about electricity. There's a song by a guy called Neo. It's a group of guys called Neo. The title of the song, NEPA Bring the Light. And guess what? Another artist came up with a song, NEPA Don't Bring Light. I don't think they know that we have since left the era of NEPA, but perhaps to say that the era of NEPA hasn't quite left us, because we still have a situation where electricity supply isn't still as much as we expect it, even though there are those who would say there's been a marginal improvement in it, but it hasn't really become what we want it to be. Just at that event that you mentioned, Mark, where the Nigerian Governors Forum are making a move, Deputy British High Commissioner also made known to us that Nigeria is the country with the largest deficit in terms of electricity in the world. And that was a very shocking thing. Nigeria has world's largest electricity deficit, and saying it affects about 90 million Nigerians. And of course, we know the impact of that on the nation's economy. Even those Nigerians who are connected to the grid, according to the Deputy British High Commissioner representing his boss at that meeting, they face frequent outages and hence don't get a reliable supply. Now, we know we have limitless and abundant opportunities. Beside the energy, the established energy sector, how in the universe are we not able to think about solar power? I saw a picture the other day about, a field of solar panels. A field of solar panels. Looking at it, it couldn't be anything less than 2 stadia of solar panels, connecting electricity into one source and supplying to the entire community. I'm pretty sure it's not just one state. Quite a lot that could be done in that regard if we would allow ourselves to think in that regard. So now that this has happened, of course, the initiatives to have states, power electricity started. At least the effort started, early in this Fourth Republic. But this is where we are now. How far are we willing to go about it now? We know it's quite a lot of work that we have to do. Our economy depends on energy supply at various levels. I can also tell you gladly, Maokwe, that there are handy power banks now that can literally charge an electric car. Yes, I can tell you that. I mean, it's just handy, it's just one, but the kind of thing that they pack, you can just connect it and then you keep going to wherever you want to go. So the technology is there. We are not lost. It's not lost on us. How easily are we, or happily are we, to embrace particularly homegrown solutions from the top down? I think that's one of the jobs of work that we have to do among ourselves, Chamberlain and Mokwe.
Yeah, so we'll hope to get a sneak peek of what the governors were thinking, what their plan is moving forward, because I don't think it will be out of place if they make it a must for all of them to have a plan, concrete plan on electricity, such that at least there just has to be something. There has to be a lot going on there.
Missed the part.
Which part?
That IO.
Oh!
There's more Gen Z. than the Gen Z people.
He knows those songs these days, and I'm like, okay. So
that's a challenge to Chamberlain.
I know what to do. Watch this space. You'll see. You will see. All right, but in the meantime, I'm gonna have to start with Vanguard newspaper this morning as we take you through some of the dailies. Presidential tussle ends is the big one on the front page of Vanguard newspaper today, as expected, I might add. Look at the riders. Supreme Court affirms Tinubu's election, dismisses Atiku, obeys appeals. NEC substantially complied with, okay, I beg your pardon, INEC. NEC is Liberia, those just came back. INEC substantially complied with Electoral Act 2022 and Constitution. So you see, that's the thing. When I look at all these things, and I just wonder, the language of the court, substantial compliance. And then when you see something in some areas, you think, no way, absolutely no way this could qualify as substantial compliance. And you could understand when people are miffed about something. If your vote doesn't count after all said and done, after all you put in place, your hope is dashed, you definitely will feel very hard done by, only to hear substantial compliance components. Oh boy. So that's what this the court essentially says here. Election cannot be nullified due to unavailability of results on INEC's IREF portal, failure to secure 25% of votes in FCT Abuja not compulsory. Petitioners didn't prove allegations of rigging. We can't revisit APC's double nomination of Kashim Shettima. Tinubu's forfeiture of $460,000 drug money raised after respondents filed their process. Time to file CSU documents, fresh evidence lapsed. Tinubu extends olive branch. PDP, LP, kick. So wait a minute, guys. Okay. Maybe we'll hold this for the guests when they come in. Because if they're saying it lapsed, and only one, what if? Maybe they talk about the what ifs much later. And so several other, oh dear, look at this. Ritual, 400 level Unipos students in police nets for killing ex-lover. Individualism, greed, ethnic sentiment, others hampering Nigeria's progress. As Amechi, former governor of Rivers State. Court orders FG Southeast governors to pay 8 billion naira, apologize to Nnamdi Kanu. And then fear of epidemic looms in police cells as courts reject remand of suspects in Lagos. So we've got a lot to grapple with there. That's Vanguard this morning.
Okay, let's take a look at what The Guardian has on the front page for you. Two stories immediately standing out right there. Tinubu laughs last as Supreme Court affirms victory. Facts and documents which were not pleaded in the petition have no place in deciding the dispute between the parties. It is my view that there is no merit in this appeal and it is hereby dismissed. That's attributed to Justice Ian Gokoro. That story is on page 6 of the paper. Take a look at this other story. It's also very important given a landmark ruling which the Lagos Sexual Offences Court reached this week in a particular instance. Amid prohibition laws, domestic sexual violence thrive nationwide. That story is their big story, which they have for you. It's on pages 4 and 5, and I think they're also putting a sort of subtle campaign at the bottom there. No means no, okay? That's where you say, and look at that. When you look at reported cases of domestic sexual violence, Lagos is topping the chart with 5,624 cases. Abia 302, Oyo 768 plus. Kano, they have about 70 daily. Bauchi 590. But again, you know, Lagos is leading for a number of reasons. I'm sure there'll be a number of reasons why experts would say that Lagos is in the lead. Maybe also because they have now brought out a mechanism to support women and to make very stringent laws. I know a number of other states to have done same. I mean, Ekiti, Edo, they have a number of states that have also done same. But it'll be interesting to see what the statistics are saying. And I think you've broken down a few of them for you right there on the front page. 70 to 80% of victims are under 15 years of age.
Wow.
Under 15 years of age. Okay, they have a number of other stories, but I want you to ponder on that one. Let's leave it there for the content.
Malqua, it's daunting, it's challenging, it's even unimaginable. But really, I mean, you know the story, Malqua, that a good number of people in certain positions in this country will not see a big deal in marrying underage children, so to speak, for whatever reason. But hey, what do we know? This Nigeria newspaper on its front page today is also nailing, so to speak, with the Supreme Court. Final verdict, no case. Supreme Court quashes Atiku Obi's suit, upholds Tinubu's victory. PDP LP expressed disappointment as APC celebrates. It's time to move on, build Nigeria, says President. Story is on page 4 of the paper today. And right at the bottom of the page, IPOB not a terrorist organization, proscription unconstitutional. That's ascribed to a court. Find the details on page 14. Look at the rider. Orders FG Southeast governors to pay 8 billion naira. Apologize to Kanu. That's also right there. Of course, beside that picture, you see a number of stories there. 4 months withheld salary. NAT rejects FG's condition for payment. Among other stories you find right there. And then beside the nameplate, alleged $3.4 billion Forex fraud. Group condemns death threat on special investigator. That story is on page 5. What does that mean? What are the details? Check the story on the inside pages. That's This Nigeria today.
Okay, so take a look at News Direct today. Opposition cries foul as Supreme Court affirms Tinubu's election. So that is how News Direct leads here today. And then look at some of the riders, which starts with Supreme Court has done justice, quote, without fear or favor, ascribed to Tinubu. Judgment, a mockery. Uriwa advises Atiku to quit politics, allow youngsters like Obi. And then you see, I have no regret, will support Tinubu again in 2027. Wiki. So that you know. In case you're wondering. So it's all there for you now. So, security forces eliminate over 100 terrorists in airstrike on Niger-Zamfara border. Okay, good to see that they're ramping up their efforts to ensure security of lives and property because we need that to move forward in this country. And then you get to see Lagos seizes 100 vehicles parked on Lagos Island bridges. And there's been a lot going on in Lagos about, in fact, people talk about the vehicles parked in front of their houses, and then what do they call that agency in Lagos? They come and clamp down on those, and people wonder, what in the world is going on here? I mean, I thought that if you park in the wrong place, but in front of their houses, how is that tantamount to violation of the laws there? And what laws are they referring to? They wonder here. So it comes across as though it's punitive, especially in the spirit of the current administration trying to ensure that multiple taxation, people are not harassed with all kinds of unbearable taxes.
Yeah, but it also depends on where these houses are, because Chamberlain, the way people build in Lagos sometimes.
No, these ones are on, for instance, if you go to Ikeja, and you see, what's the name of this road in Ikeja, for instance, and it's not on the roads. You can see the road, and then this park space is just in front of the house.
Because I have seen streets in this same Lagos where people park on either side of the road.
That's different.
A very narrow lane.
No, this is not the narrow lane.
For vehicles to pass.
This is not that narrow. I don't know why this name skips me. This is not the narrow lane now, but just right in front of their house, when it's not on the roads.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a gutter before the road, and then they come and clamp. So in that case, you wonder, what is going on here?
The Lagos state government really needs to up its feedback mechanism. You know, the way people are able to get messages across to it. It needs to be swift. It needs to be able to, it needs to be prompt. It needs to be able to get people quickly and get their complaints addressed as swiftly as possible. I'm also hearing things that I should not, for instance, if you pay your taxes, for instance, if you pay your tenement rate in Lagos to register it, that can also be a problem. And I'm wondering how is that possible? I do not want to believe that is a situation where citizens go and pay their legitimate taxes, and then to get government officials to do the right thing and ensure that is, written against your name and you're no longer owing the government, then you still have to grease palms. That cannot be the way to go.
I've seen somebody this is another matter, whose vehicle has been in a mechanic for months. Then they send him a picture of his car saying you violated traffic somewhere.
That's a possibility.
It's like,
no, that's a mechanic.
Violated? He flipped.
That is not an impossibility. Mechanics,
all for revenue.
No.
The car was not. It was demobilized. No tires on the car. It wasn't moving.
Are you for real?
It wasn't moving.
That person should ask very critical questions of their mechanic, please.
It wasn't moving.
They need to ask
tires on the car.
Very critical questions of their mechanic. But hey, as I said, feedback mechanism, it needs to be able to resolve matters like this in Lagos. Otherwise, people will exploit. I remember when they started this one-way law, and saying you cannot pass one way. If you do, we're going to sell your car. The way citizens were harassed,
sometimes.
The way citizens suffered, especially when the one-way signals are hidden.
Most times I never see it.
Oh.
Most times. They hide in a certain corner and they pounce as though they are deliberately waiting for you to break, to make a mistake.
This happened to me. On a visit to Lagos. This was not them say. I experienced it firsthand in VI, where there was no sign, absolutely no sign. And when I was trying to draw the attention of the police people that there is no sign here, please, can you show me where the sign says this is one way? Madam, are you really trying to argue with us that you've violated the law? But I would see the law that says this, because to the best of our knowledge, this used to be, are you saying that visitors should just automatically know that this road is one way? And they were waiting. We even just tried to make a U-turn when we were discovered, and then lo and behold, police had come and they had blocked us. I was like, this is amazing.
That's food for the day. Make that food for the day.
I was no
Especially
food.
if it's on a Friday.
This was the bad food.
Oh, the bone parts.
This was bad food. The food that can give you bellyache. But I do feel sorry for anyone who is not able to stand on their right. And I think that's why feedback
but how many people?
Is very, very important. There needs to be a mechanism where people can report immediately, as soon as possible, especially when their rights are being trampled upon.
Yeah.
Lagos has already gone through NSARS. We had the anniversary this month. I think on Tuesday, some people will be doing an extensive report as to how far, some of the recommendations have been implemented, some of the recommendations of the different NSARS panels that were set up across the length and breadth of this country, how far they have been implemented. Because what people really want to see is that interface between government and its people, the responsiveness between government and its people. That's why that feedback mechanism is extremely important. So, we'll wait and see. Lagos is the example here. They seem to be making progress in some areas, but they suddenly have so much work to do in many other areas. Emily.
Absolutely so. And so...
well, I guess it's my paper now. I'm looking at Business Day. Yes, I love Business Day, by the way, because I never get to see it often enough. This is the lead headline, and they're talking health. Look at that. Nigerians prize health as wearable device sales boom. Yes, you read that right. Many more people are taking walks, counting steps. And I think people soon realize that when you have health, indeed you have wealth. Because when there's life, there's hope. And when there's life, you're on your feet, you have some food to eat, you have a cup of tea in front of you. You know, just make sure that you're able to preserve what it is that you have in this season. And it does appear that we're seeing that in terms of the boom sales. That's the lead story right there. Christmas airfares double. Christmas airfares double as jet fuel hits 1,000 naira per litre. Okay, so it's going to be quite a thing to travel this Christmas. If you see your relatives at home, please welcome them with open arms. It's not been easy to get there. PDP LP blast verdict as Supreme Court upholds Tinubu's win. And you also see there, Nigerians groan on the weight of tomato prices. Okay, that's also right there on the front page. Ex-CBN Deputy Governor Omololu appointed as APSS chair. I don't know what APSS means, but maybe those who are in the business sector. It does sound like something good when you're appointed to a chair, so congratulations to him. But that's the lead story on the front page of Business Day and a number of other stories right there. Let's leave it there for the paper.
Yeah, so rightly so too. That ends a look at some of the dailies here this morning. So quite a number of items we've got for you here today. So yes, we'll start off with this presidential matter from the Supreme Court. Then we'll take a look at the electricity market. What is in it for you? What kind of role can you play? Should you be optimistic? I guess we'll find out. And then what about this case about this slavery, child domestic violence? So it's a thing. It's something that we need to address. So all of that will go for you here today, this Friday morning. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Security operatives take over the premises of the Supreme Court ahead of the presidential election petition judgment. The courtroom is quite busy as senior lawyers and top government dignitaries exchange pleasantries ahead of the day's proceedings. Just before the commencement of the judgment, the Apex Court approved the live broadcast of the proceedings. The 7-member panel led by Justice John Okoro arrives and takes the appeal of the presidential candidate of the PDP, Mr. Atiku Abubakar. Justice Okoro read the lead judgment and he struck out the allegation by Mr. Abubakar that failure to promptly upload the polling unit results of the election to the IREV amounted to non-compliance with the provisions of the Electoral Act, which he believes should invalidate the election.
Filed on the 18th of September.
The court dismissed the argument, explaining that the IREV is not a result collation platform and could not have invalidated the election.
Case number 23, CV.
The court also held that President Tinubu's failure to score 25% of the votes in the Federal Capital Territory when he had polled 25% votes in over 24 states as required by law did not affect his victory in the election. The court also held that Atiku failed to prove his allegation of widespread rigging during the election or that he won the election. Justice Okoro held that there was no merit in the appeal and subsequently dismissed it.
That all the issues submitted by all the parties are similar and any could be adopted for guidance. I propose, however, to determine this appeal based on the issues as formulated by the appellants. After all, it is their own appeal. Issue 1. The thrust of Issue 1 is whether the lower court was right in refusing to hold that the failure of the first respondent to electronically transmit results from polling units nationwide for the collation of results introduced by the Electoral Act 2022 and specified in the regulations and guidelines for the conduct of elections 2022 and manual for election officials 2023 does not amount to non-compliance, which substantially affected the outcome of the election.
The court had earlier dismissed the bid by Mr. Abubakar to tender fresh evidence of certificate forgery against President Tinubu. The panel held that it lacked the jurisdiction to entertain such evidence that was not tendered before the Presidential Election Petition Court. Justice Okoro accused lawyers to Mr. Abubakar of being tardy in their attempts to obtain the evidence and tender it at the lower court. Next, the panel turned to the appeal of the Labour Party and its presidential candidate, Mr. Peter Obi. In a unanimous judgment, the 7-member panel of the court, led by Justice John Okoro, summarily dismissed the appeal, stating that the issues raised were substantially the same as Mr. Abubakar's appeal. According to the court, the only issue different in Mr. Obi's appeal is the allegation of double nomination of Vice President Kashim Shettima. The court relied on its earlier judgment and dismissed the appeal.
The verdict is final. President Bola Tinubu has been declared President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for the next 4 years by the Supreme Court, which affirmed the judgment of the Petition Court that delivered judgment on September 6, 2023. This brings to an end about 7 months of legal battle between all the parties involved in the case. From the Supreme Court of Nigeria, Emanuela Ekele, Channels Television News.
Thank you for staying with us. That's the conversation we're having this morning. Reactions have, of course, been coming in about that judgment. The PDP, for instance, has also put out its own statement. The PDP is appalled by the judgment of the Supreme Court in the petition filed by the PDP and presidential candidate, Atiku Abubakar, against the declaration of the All Progressive Congress and Bola Tinubu as winners of the February 25, 2023 presidential election by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. Goes on to say down the line that Nigerians earnestly expected the Supreme Court to uphold and defend the clear provisions of the 1999 Constitution in terms of qualification and minimum requirement for a winner to be declared in a presidential election in Nigeria, especially with regards to the required statutory 25% of votes in the FCT, as well as issues of violation of electoral rules and guidelines, brazen manipulations and alterations of election results by the APC. Well, on and on, of course, at the bottom of the page, the letter signed, the statement signed by the PDP's the PDP remains undeterred and charges Nigerians not to be discouraged or allow the judgment to detract from their collective quest for the entrenchment of a credible electoral system. It can guarantee a government that truly derives its legitimacy from the people. That's a statement of the PDP on that matter, but we have two gentlemen who are here to review that judgment of the Supreme Court, where all grounds of the parties failed as the court upheld the election of the president as having been duly elected. That's a statement of the PDP, as we read to you the other time. But that's the reality that we have on our hands. As I said, two gentlemen joined us this morning, both of them senior advocates of Nigeria. Professor Paul Ananaba is here with us. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria, as I mentioned, and he's counsel to the Labour Party. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Of course, your party has responded and all of that. But generally, by way of an understanding, what's your take on the judgment? I have a general idea, but I'm not you.
Well, I'm not speaking for the party.
Okay.
When you act for a party in a case, and final judgment has been given at the Supreme Court, you are no longer talking about as a counsel in the case. You have a higher calling to justice, to patriotism, nationalism, and the best interest of the society. So I do not speak for the party at this point, or for the candidates. The judgment of the Supreme Court is part of their duties under the Constitution and the Supreme Court Act. They have done their duty. There's no way that judgment, which is a political case, will be accepted by everybody. Yeah. And there's no way that judgment will be perfect. But before talking about that judgment, I want to appreciate the fact that at least in this run of election, despite the volatility and the concerns, the parties decided to go through the court system. And that is why we can sit down and discuss. If there were violence, I can't even leave my house or my office to come here. So that at least we have achieved one culture of realizing that, oh, we can go to court. And I think that it now also goes beyond the Supreme Court decision. There are certain aspects of that decision that I believe will have to be addressed by legislation. So the Electoral Act needs to be amended now. And not an amendment by persons who are not practitioners. That's why we've been failing in our amendments. And we keep them
practitioners in terms of?
In terms of politicians, and much more election petition practitioners. And then a few of regulators. Because it's not about who won or who lost. But the judgment will have a trickling effect on the governorship petitions that are going to the Supreme Court, on the National Assembly petitions that are in the Court of Appeal now.
So which aspects in particular are you asking to be adjusted?
There are so many. In the first place, why do we need 180 days for a petition? Another 60 days, Court of Appeal. Another 60 days, Supreme Court. There is no reason why every election in Nigeria cannot be concluded within 60 days. Petitions. And before anybody is sworn in at all. Yeah, we will say yes, the courts have given judgment, yes, but it's better if nobody has been sworn in and the elections are taken clearly. Let me give you an example. Within 2 months of every election, including the presidential, you can determine the petition that may arise to finality.
Are you sure that is possible? Because one of the issues...
let me tell you how. Okay. I'm a practitioner.
The reason I'm asking, and you will take us through it,
yes,
is there's so much data to collate.
Let me tell you why.
Okay.
If INEC is given 7 days after election and declaration of results to forward and put in their website all electoral results. In any event, one, all the panelists in all the tribunals will have the results. All the political parties will have the results. It will be there in NBA. Within another 7 days, that makes it 14 days. Every person who has a complaint, who is having a complaint, will now limit the complaint clearly within the results declared. You understand?
Okay.
Now, it goes into what has been transmitted. Now, within another 7 days, which is 21 days, the tribunal will sit on this as identified areas. you no longer need INEC, give me CTC. Don't give me CTC. And INEC will not be a party in terms of being a respondent. INEC will be an independent party to answer to any issue pertaining to them.
Okay.
Now, let me land it. I have taken away 21 days. Within 7 days, every tribunal will determine, you have seen the Supreme Court. I mean, processes are before them. Within 3 days, they gave judgment. So, within 7 days, each tribunal, maximum 14 days, will review whatever complaints. Looking at the result, everybody has a result. There's no issue of it's not certified, INEC did not give me, everything is there. You don't need to call polling unit agents again. Section 137 works out. In 1 month, tribunal finished. Another 2 weeks. If you have a complaint, within 7 days, take it to the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal, in 7 days, determines, because it will now be on the narrow compass. You want to go to Supreme Court further, another 2 weeks, it is done.
Okay. Well, as I said, there are two of you joining us this morning. The other fellow is in Abuja with my colleagues. Go ahead, Chamberlain.
Thank you, Ayo. Mr. Adebayo Joe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, is here with us. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
Well,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, the judgment is, impressions are all out there, but could you give us an inkling into what the thinking, the impression of the legal team could be, or it was, or it still is, probably?
Yes. Let me say this. I think after the election, you brought in on this program Mr. Andy Johnson, SCN, who analyzed the role and the nature of what the legal team who intend to fight this opposition will be. And he made reference to the legal team in US. And believe me, the APC and the presidential legal team were not set up after the declaration of result. We've been in place 2 months before the election was held. And the team was under strict supervision by former Minister of Works, Babatunde Fasola. He assembled the team. He assembled that team. And the team had been meeting ever before the election was held. And after the declaration of result, and when others were just running and scatter, groping in the dark, didn't know what to do, we had in place our defense already. And you can imagine, we were not mistaken what would be the outcome of those petitions. And we were proof right yesterday when the Supreme Court affirmed unanimously the decision of the Court of Appeal. So it was a tag team, solid cast team, which you cannot get anywhere in this country because it parades the best of seasoned legal personnel. You can imagine, if you have in any team, the current Attorney General of Federation, before he was appointed, Latif Fagbemi, Malam Ali, Karim Alajo, Tayo Tibo, Kensola Jaya, and what have you? Believe me, without being immodest, you cannot get it better anywhere. It's an imbalanced team where you play side by side, that team, with the team on all the other side, with the fight. So the result, obvious. And that was the excellent result. You know, at the Court of Appeal, it was unanimous. Likewise, yesterday, it was unanimous. And that's 5-0, the Court of Appeal, then 7-2 yesterday. And people can say whatever they like, politicians. And like one, I think it was an Arabic prophet who said, where ignorance is bliss, the wise is foolish. How will those 12 people be wrong? Can those 12 people, 5 at the Court of Appeal, 7 at the Supreme Court, can they be wrong? So yes, anybody who says anything or anything otherwise to have his examine. That's the truth.
We'll examine part of what Mr. Nanaba has said now, but we've also heard people who looked at it in the context of probably history, where they just felt, look, after all, no courts, no time has any presidential election in this country been upturned, no matter the reasons. And so they just felt who knows? If they look at it in that context, perhaps, I know you may think it might be out of context, considering the what you just told us, how this was set up.
It was lack. You know, when you prepare to fail, and when you prepare to plan, it means you've prepared to fail.
Okay.
They didn't prepare very well.
Yeah, but some of the things that came through, part of what suggestions that Professor Nanaba is giving now, which is the role of the umpire, INEC. So if they're supposed to be the umpire, and then they appear in this case to defend themselves, should we actually have a second look at that and see, okay, look, in order for people not to get the wrong impression as though they are always on one side when this kind of cases come up, do we follow some of the examples he said, look, let them be an independent body so that when they come through, perhaps their position can be properly distilled to everybody else?
I don't agree with him. You see, one of our recurring problems in this country is that we are fond of citing examples elsewhere without thinking of our peculiar circumstances here. Look at when the Naira swap, when the new Naira was. People are saying it's good, you can do electronic banking. How many Nigerians have access to banking, not to talk of access to electronic banking? How many of us? Where I come from, it's an urban local government, and South local government, under the former municipal. Before you could get bank facilities from my area to another place in local government, you will have to take about 2 buses. You get my point? So what are we talking about? You see, in Kenya, where most people refer to, where this petition, where it will be it will have been concluded before the winner will be sworn in. It's only one level. That's at the Supreme Court. They don't start from the Court of Appeal. They start at the Supreme Court. And you see, in Kenya, it is not, they don't practice adversary proceeding, which we do. Their own system is inquisitorial. I watched the first one where President Uhuru Kenyatta election was nullified. That's Raila, Odinga, and Kenyatta. Yeah. And I also watched the second one. In fact, I have them. Most of them were commenting. They don't even have it. They don't want them. In fact, when the first one was done, I was in Kenya at that time. And let me say this. In Kenya, their own electoral umpire is called Independent Electoral and Boundary Commission. They do 2 things. They conduct election. They are also they settle boundary dispute. It is in custodial. And they are conducted. Their cases are fought on affidavit evidence alone. And when you look at their lawyers, you will even see them giving evidence. Why conducting their proceeding? Yeah, a lawyer must not give evidence. You call witnesses who will give evidence. And people are now saying, no, I've asked them, how do we, tell me, the only thing that you can do is that we can see the goalpost. You can conduct our election maybe 9 months before the swearing-in days. 9 months before, so that we have enough time to conclude all those cases. And again, the presidential election, we can also narrow down the issues. It is not. Yeah, it is not all infractions that you bring to court.
Mr. Joe, we've heard, I'm sure you also have heard people say, look, it is incredibly difficult to prove any case beyond reasonable doubt or go out of the realm of substantial compliance.
Unless some persons are not proved beyond reasonable doubt. It is civil. For those 3 generis, it has to be proved on matter of probability. But it's only when you raise issues that are criminal in nature that you have to prove that, and not all criminal natures, when it is collateral to the main issue involved, then you have to prove it. You understand that? And we talk of honor and Umubudu, adjacent and Umubudu, and cases like that and that. You know my point? So it is not new. It is nothing new. Honor and Umubudu was decided after the 1993 election, likewise adjacent and Umubudu, after 1993, during the Second Republic. So they are nothing new. And they've always been there in our electoral jurisprudency. What am I saying is this. Let us conduct our election well ahead of the time. And you see, when people are saying,
but how does that change anything?
When people are saying you can do it before the swearing, they've forgotten that Ross justice is not justice. Ross justice is not justice.
But do you support the idea? Do you agree with the idea, the principle, that it is only right that if there's been a dispute with regards to election, it should be resolved before swearing in. Do you?
Yes, that's why I said we need to have the election well ahead of the time.
No, it's very...
You see, when we started this, when we started this national democracy, I was in Ajimobi and Nakada in 2007. It took us over 2.5 years before we could get judgment at the first tribunal. And it also went on to the Court of Appeal. You know, we all remember how long it took former Governor Aregbesola before he could get judgment. Likewise, Governor Adam Oshiomhole. In fact, Fayemi was close to 4 years. Some people who have even spent their time there. But now we have 180 days, 60 days, and 60 days. But what I would like to suggest is this.
Former Governor Peter Obi, who was a candidate in this election. But the point is this. I mean, the thing is, if we agree on the principle, then, and there is consensus on that, some people will say that then finding a way to achieve it will not be a problem.
Yes.
But, you know, let's leave that aside. Listening to the judgment of the Supreme Court, of the Supreme Court justices yesterday, what immediately came to my mind again, because we saw the role that technology played in this election and the role it was supposed to play, and how it fell short once again, and it would seem that a lot of Nigerians were very disappointed as a result of that. It was part of the reasons, it was part of the issues that were tabled before the Lord Justices yesterday, the role of IREV and the transmission of results, which they seem to have dealt very decisively with that. The results itself was more important than how it was transmitted. And what immediately came to my mind was the issue of the card reader. When in 2015, INEC introduced the card reader, and it was supposed to be a fantastic innovation that should reduce fraud in the elections. And we found out that, yes, it did help in many places, but in some places it didn't work and it was abused. The leeway that was given for incidence forms were abused. And even where, you know, it wasn't abused, where the evidence produced by the results from the card reader, you know, were useful or could have been useful to show that fraud actually happened in some places, were told that it was not a part of the law. And so people couldn't, the litigants couldn't tender this evidence before their lordships. And then, you know, they had to go back and incorporate it into our laws. It seems that we're back there again, where we have put another innovation. This time, not very clearly, it's been ambiguous in the law. So it does appear that we're back again. We're going to have to go back again to re-amend our laws, because it would seem that that's where the problem does lie. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with you. Because this last election, 2023, the use of incidence form was not allowed. I went to my poll unit with my wife, my daughter, and a friend. My daughter and my wife, they are Labour Party adherents. I'm for APC, while my friend wanted to vote for PDP. Well, I couldn't vote because the card reader could not authenticate.
There was no card reader, it was BVAS.
No, BVAS. The BVAS could not authenticate his thumbprint. And when they tried to do the Irish one for him, it could not. So, you know, if it had been under the 2015, they would have asked him to fill the incident form. It would have been allowed. And you see that the use of the BVAS reduced substantially. We all knew the results that were always coming from Kaduna, Kano, and Katsina State, even Rivers and Lagos State. But it was not so under the just concluded election. In fact, I sympathize with INEC. Recently, I saw Mr. Festus Okoye during the Federal Office of Justice Aminaogi, and I said, you people, how are you be able to sleep? That's why I said, it's like all your efforts have been rubbish just because of failure to transmit all the results on the IRF. And look at you like, what is IRF? You see, media, and let me say, with respect to people, you assisted those who were making mere lamentations. You hyped them. Look, I belong to over 150 WhatsApp groups, platform. Serious one. Making up, in fact, in one, my learned senior, Polanaba, is there. I challenged all them. I said, let me see one person here who can come out and say, when my polling unit result was later published or was later shown on the RF, it was different from that what was declared at the polling unit.
And there were
nobody, up to today.
Just a moment.
Nobody.
No, just a moment, Mr. Adebayo. There were people who actually showed that.
Have you seen them? Have you seen any?
No, just a moment.
No, let me ask you. I've not seen
actually...
any, and I'm even challenging them to today. Look.
Are you saying then that all of the other pictures, I mean...
Propaganda! We were the tribunal.
Just a moment.
Look, let me tell you, let me say this. When they brought some, they said it was blood. In areas where they themselves won, where they go in Southeast State, they brought some blood election result. In area where they did, if it was blood from the RF, was it blood in the one day? You have party agents all over.
Okay, so
why can't you collect your party agents home or collect from the security agency?
Are you saying then, just a moment, are you saying then that you see no need to amend our laws any further?
The laws will be amended now. If we're in line with the judgment that was deferred as for yesterday.
All right.
Because some...
Look, what should the law be amended to reflect?
No. For example now, like I said, we must conduct our election way ahead so that all the legal processes will have been completed before the winner, the person who has been adjudged winner is sworn in. But I don't believe in abridging the time. Even 21 days that were given to them, they couldn't put up something tangible or which is solid cash because of lack of time. Because every duty, honorary duty, is imposed on the prisoner rather than, and that's why people like us, I don't file petitions. Right. I only defend.
Okay.
Let's
go to Lagos. Ayo.
Well, Chamberlain, well, Prof, I know you may have a reaction or two, but I just want to, I don't know if we can just quickly go to some of the, you want to quickly react to something?
No, I'm not reacting.
Okay. One of the issues that was decided yesterday by the Supreme Court was that some issues that have been litigated shouldn't have been brought to the court at all, should not be relitigated. They cited the example, for instance, of the issue of APC's double nomination of Vice President Kashim Shettima, that it had earlier been decided by the court on May 26, 2023, and to have been brought back again was something that, according to them, it shouldn't have happened in the first place. Why do you think that kind of thing happens?
You want me to...
I mean, it's this what the Supreme Court says. So, I mean, excuse me.
Well, that's the decision of the Supreme Court, and we're bound by it.
Okay.
But also, we are taught in the first year in the university, when you are taught the Nigerian legal system, you will be taught that there can be 2 cases like that. And you go back, when another one comes up to the Supreme Court, it can be distinguished, and there may be a reason for the Supreme Court to review and know whether it will change its mind. Now, if a decision is wrong, or is perceived to be wrong by a person, or that the Supreme Court has given a decision on a point, does not mean that that it is now cast on stone. Some of them may have to be reviewed over time. So I'm not going to join issues with the justices on why they felt that way. But I believe that...
but this, pardon me for jumping in, this case doesn't look like it was something similar. It was the exact same case of double nomination.
Yes. Like I said, I don't want to join issues on that. If you get into that case, many tribunals took that PDP case out of context. And based on that, every other petition, many persons or litigants suffered from it. What I mean is, that means that, when you talk about nomination, that every issue of nomination is now a pre-election matter. Now, that's what many tribunals made out of that decision. And based on it, you will now start having chorus judgments. Yes, in some instances, if a law is settled, you don't need to a fair position is settled, it becomes a time-honored principle. But sometimes it's not always, it's not a computer thing. It's if there is a reason to bring back that same issue to say, but let's look at it again.
Okay. Well, just one quick thing, and then we go back to Abuja. Talk to us about what Nigerians should do, understand, or expect going forward. Yes, no doubt, the drove of people that voted against the president are not happy with the judgment. There is no doubt about that. However, the law is the law. The Supreme Court is the Supreme Court. The judgment of the Supreme Court stands as the Supreme Court. With the disappointments that people have had and the kind of expressions that we are having, that seems to be, as you said, looking like we are remonstrating the decision of the Supreme Court. What should we be telling our people so that our system, the judiciary, particularly the Supreme Court, is not denigrated?
All right. Those are part of the issues I was raising, that we should be having the National Assembly do its work. When you look at the Constitution, you have Section 4, Section 5, Section 6. Section 4 should be kicked in. Let the National Assembly look at the Electoral Act and we thoroughly do a realistic and practicable and Nigeria-tailored Electoral Act.
Okay.
And we can start now, not 2 or 3 years or a year to the elections. This is so that electoral matters are political matters. The courts are not well fitted for political cases. That's not, and that is what allows politicians to begin to push on judges, try to destabilize the system, wanting judges to behave like politicians. That's part of the debilitating things you see.
Okay. All right.
Going forward, the National Assembly should amend the Electoral Act in an enduring manner. And I've told you, for example, one is INEC. INEC should no longer be a respondent.
Okay.
And the proof, onus of proof of every electoral issue should now be moved to INEC, not on the party.
Okay.
Now, when you have that, things like the state of subpoena now, after that decision, should be reviewed so that subpoenas can be used.
I'm suspecting that maybe by you or by a body of lawyers like yourself, you're going to have to give us a compendium so that the National Assembly can have something to look at. But now we have to thank you very much for your time. Professor Paul Anandaba is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Chamberlain and Malwe.
Well, yeah, so as we also wind down here, Mr. Ojo, so moving forward, you know, when you say, you all say that justice should not just be done, but it must be seen to have been done. So moving forward, in order for a lot more people to also be of that impression that whatever is handed down is seen to be justice, those amendments that he suggested, would they be ideal?
Yes, like the most important one, that we should conduct our election well ahead of time. That we should have factored in the 180 days, the 60 days, and 60 days. And again, more importantly, you see, presidential election, 2 levels of court, Court of Appeal and Supreme Court. National Assembly, 2 levels of court. Then why must the governorship be an exception, which is 3 levels of court? No, that one also be used to 2 levels of court. If they may start from the Court of Appeal and end at Supreme Court, or if they like, let them start from the tribunal and let it terminate Court of Appeal as it used to be. But the onus of proof, that can only be done if we want to change our Evidence Act. The Core Evidence Act has fixed it that he who has had must prove, and it can't be otherwise. And INEC, who is the party that's really charged to conduct election, must be a party.
We cannot make exceptions in the Evidence Act.
That would be turning the law on
You
its
say
head.
except in electoral matters.
Yes.
I mean, that's what I'm
Now,
saying.
I know
that the evidence act will be fantastic except in electoral matters.
Waste panel suggested that. But INEC is not the one asserting that INEC has conducted election, and INEC said this election that I conducted. So it's like asking asking a defendant in criminal trial to establish his innocence. No, it's not possible. It is the prosecutor who must prove that he's guilty beyond single doubt.
All right. It's an unending conversation, so probably we'll see how the National Assembly internalizes or takes all of this on board to see what can be described as the best position moving forward. Thank you for coming on as well.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Adebayo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Well, back in a moment. Stay with us.
Wednesday's plenary session in the House of Representatives commences far behind the regular schedule. As lawmakers delve into the business of the day, their attention turns to the power sector amid concerns that since the 2013 unbundling of the Power Holding Company of Nigeria, trillions of naira have been pumped into the power sector by the federal government and international donor agencies with no significant improvement.
The World Bank, which approved an International Development Association credit to the tune of $486 billion, aimed at upgrading the wheeling capacity of the Nigerian electricity transmission grid, including the rehabilitation and expansion of transmission substations across the country.
The House mandated Committee on Power to investigate all the financial interventions in the power sector since privatization, with a view to determine whether the funds were judiciously utilized and report back within 6 weeks for further legislative action. Next, lawmakers debate a motion to compel JAMB, WAEC and NECO examination bodies to register students for free in the 2023-2024 examination exercise as a palliative measure following the removal of fuel subsidy.
The House is also aware that one of the major challenges of the low-income earners, any parents, is the education of their children, particularly in payment of examination fees.
These statutory charges like WAEC, NECO, and so on should not just lie exclusively with the state governments or the local governments. We also at the National Assembly level and the State Assembly level also have an obligation to also contribute in our own little way.
I want to add that all members of the National Assembly should adopt a school and pay for the JAMB or what? Yes! You see, Mr. Speaker, this is what we are not doing.
The motion is then rejected, following an amendment by a lawmaker.
I do not know if we have the authorities to compel somebody that is not under your control. WAEC is not for Nigeria alone.
Those in support of this motion, that this particular motion should be stepped down, should say aye. Aye. Those against should say nay. Nay. The ayes have it.
Similarly, the House stepped down a motion on non-compliance with extant laws in implementing presidential palliatives and the National Social Investment Programs for further consultation. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Welcome back. Yes, we'll be talking about electricity. And we've got, as you've seen there, John Omofama, who is a lead consultant for the power sector to Nigeria Governors Forum. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
So we understand that they've had several, well, maybe not, maybe two several still. Several meetings now in the forum, trying to see how to chart a pathway, what to do especially after the president signed that amendment into law. Several people are expecting the governors to, you know what they say here, hit the ground running. So now you are lead consultant. Some ideas are coming through. So what is going on? What should we expect from the forum?
Thank you. First of all, the first step that triggered this was the amendment of the Constitution by President Buhari, or former President Buhari, that now puts electricity, or rather gave unfettered rights to states to make laws for electricity generation, transmission, and distribution, even in areas covered by the national grid. The challenge used to be that states couldn't make laws for electricity in areas covered by the national grid. So the amendment of the Constitution removed that constraint. The states can now make laws across the value chain of electricity. Yeah. And then the Electricity Act, in keeping to the constitutional provisions, had to be amended or put in place to now make sure that states now had that right in law. And the federal government would also regulate the national market. So what the Electricity Act has created a two-tier electricity market. One, the federal electricity market, and what we're now delving towards now is for states to now have their own electricity markets as well. But it's a very interesting market because the federal market is what you would describe as a wholesale market. So you have generation and transmission. And the electricity distribution will be regulated, licensed and regulated by state governments. It's a very interesting electricity landscape we're entering into. As regards what the state governors have been doing, having realized or fought for that right to provide electricity for their citizens, the state governors have been making, some states have actually gone ahead to make their laws. Ondo State was the first. We've had Ekiti, we've had Enugu just passed their laws last month. Rivers will soon pass their law anytime soon, and a couple of states. Delta State has also passed the law, and probably they would amend it to now reflect some of the greater powers that states have. So a lot of states have, Osun State has sent their bill to their House of Assembly. Edo State, they passed their law. Where we are now is now putting in place structures to implement state laws so that you don't have market disruptions. Right? It's important that, yes, there's a federal law, which is the Electricity Act. The state laws need to align because it's a common market. So you don't have disruptions to end users, consumers like yourself. But at the same time, giving the states the room to create more. So what you have will be more competition at distribution level. We're not all going to now be dependent on the national grid. Within our states, we can have our state grids, we can have state distributors give us electricity as opposed to what we currently have, which is the national grid provision, and if the national grid is down, we don't have any power.
But what about, because when you say more competition at the distribution level?
Yes.
What about transmission?
Transmission is an interesting, the reason why you have transmission in the first place is if you're doing long distance transportation of electricity. Now, what the law says is that states can only make laws for electricity within their states. You're not allowed to do interstate. So intrastate, you can make laws. So that then makes you realize that there's no need to put transmission infrastructure. It's very expensive.
I thought Kaduna was doing something like that previously.
No, there's transmission infrastructure, but guess what? You can generate somewhere here and serve the entire Guzakwe area or even Abuja itself, and have its own power plant and distribute the power within Abuja without creating a transmission backbone. When I mean transmission, we're talking of high voltage transmission lines, 132, 330. That doesn't mean you will not have medium voltage, low voltage lines. But typically when we say transmission, we're talking of high voltage lines, which are built to carry transport power for long distances. You might say, like a state like Cross Rivers, that end-to-end is over 400 kilometers. They might need a transmission infrastructure, but it's expensive. Why do you need a transmission infrastructure where you have energy sources close by? You may as well just tap your energy sources and provide power to the last mile user without having to build a $1 million per kilometer transmission backbone. You don't need that.
So a lot of states are looking at decentralizing their power and making sure they're able to utilize as much of whatever available resource is present in a particular area to serve localities. Yes. That's what they're looking at.
Yes.
But I don't know if you're able to shed light on what some states are exploring, because some states seem to have multiple options. If you come to, say, northern Nigeria, where there is the abundance of the sun, a lot of them might be looking to explore the sun. Maybe in the Niger Delta, gas might be an option. But from what you've seen so far, What are some of the options that some states are exploring?
The states are exploring all the energy resources available, right? And a lot of the states are now carrying out what you call your integrated resource planning, which is to dimension your energy resource and also your requirement, your load requirement, and where you need it, right? And also the affordability. So that planning process is going on, because without that planning, you may struggle to attract the necessary investments. You may struggle to know, is solar best for us? Is your mini hydros best for us? Or how do we continue to get power? How do we do gas to power? How do we utilize our gas resources for power? So clearly, for states like Delta, Rivers, they will utilize their gas resources. It's a no-brainer there. States in the north, they're looking at how best to utilize their solar resources. But then you must tie it to the end user. You must tie it to consumers, right? So that's where that planning is going on. For Lagos State, that has a clear roadmap in terms of their integrated resource planning, it's all done. They're looking at a mix of solar and gas. And so renewable energy, they're looking at their rooftops, how to put solar panels on rooftops. They're looking at how to put solar panels on the lagoon, what you call floating solar, right? So just looking at all the energy resources you can tap in an affordable and sustainable manner. So once, and a lot of states are going through that process, and once it's done, it's clear that they will start the implementation. But first things first is to create the structures they need to regulate the market. So they are now at the point where they're creating the state electricity regulators, because without that, you really can't go forward. It's the state regulators that will then put out all the terms, the license conditions, and also see how to utilize those energy resources.
From end to end, in a continuous concerted format, if a state really puts its heart to it, how long do you think that it should take a very serious-minded state government to be able to achieve, from planning to implementation? How long do you think it should take them to be able to get results?
Well, it depends on what we refer to as results, because even passing the law.
Let me confirm my own results. Results will be electricity in the homes of Nigerians. That's the result I'm referring to.
So, like I said, that initial planning needs to happen, because then that will dimension how quickly or how best the state can attract investors to provide the power, and the power gets to you. Now, some states are far ahead of the curve, like Edo State. They already have a power company called Osioma Power, and they've built generation, and then they've done their distribution infrastructure. We're just waiting for the law, and then once Edo State creates its regulatory arm, that will determine how end users like yourself will connect. Some states have started the process. They need to make they need to create their regulators. Keep in mind, it's the regulator that will issue licenses. Electricity is a licensed business. So once the regulators get off the ground, investors will come, and then licenses will be issued. Give or take, from next year, you should start seeing states who are already far ahead change the dynamics of the electricity markets.
What is your thinking? Okay, you want to follow up on that?
Well, he said by next year we should begin to...
Some states that are far ahead of the curve, not all states.
Oh, okay. Well, that'll be good. But what's your thinking about, because, right now, there's this argument about the service charter, where they wonder, yes, you're supposed to provide electricity, but when you don't fulfill those terms of service, there's nothing that seems to happen to those persons on the part of the consumers now. And so many areas of that service charter still not being strictly adhered to. You know how customers purchase several things. In fact, they'll tell you point blank, the discourse, you buy this, buy that. All of those things happen. So for these states now, in terms of ensuring that consumers don't get the short end of the stick, how much of that conversation features in all of this plan, so that at the end of the day, they know, if I'm coming into this sector, it will be run professionally. We know that all parties will adhere to the rules without maybe somebody coming off worse.
Great question. Part of the regulations is that part of the regulation, the Act transitions NERC's ability to regulate these schools to states. That includes service charter. The challenge we've had is NERC is somewhere in Abuja, maybe you're in Lagos or somewhere in Edo State, and then to file your complaints takes a while. NERC to treat it is, so we've seen a situation where the ability to enforce service charter by NERC has been a challenge, a lot of constraints. Now, with states taking over the regulatory provisions for these schools, states are closer to the customers. So, for instance, take Edo State, where Edo State, they're making plans to make sure that the school in that state provides services that they've signed up to already. So in other words, if you are supposed to give an area, say, 16 hours of supply, the state is now putting in place structures to make sure they get 16 hours of supply, and also making regulations to make sure there are sanctions where it doesn't apply. Lagos State, they're thinking of how to make sure Lagosians have meters and not rely on a cool disco or a Ikeja disco to think of where to raise money to buy meters, right? So a number of, some of the states are now becoming creative to say, look, at the end of the day, it's not only about us building new generation and distribution infrastructure, it's making sure that the discos in our states provide good service. And they're now trying to craft the regulations to make sure they're able to enforce a lot of these service charters, right? So,
and they can do that?
Oh, yes.
Oh, it's a good thing to note. I think the question I was going to ask you just quickly came back, which was around generation. We know a number of generation companies are situated close to where it is they can get access to resources that will help with generation. Are they also free to supply state governments? I mean, a number of them are currently connected to the national grid. Would they also be able to supply capacity to state?
So that's the wholesale market. Those, the on-grid generators, we've got 26 of them. They will supply electricity to the national market, right? So that's the wholesale market.
That's what the law says?
Yes, because they sell their power to the national grid. The national grid is an interstate grid network. So that power will go to the grid. That's the wholesale market. Provided that the power is so, if a state licenses a generation company, the expectation is that generation company will only provide power within the state. It cannot export the power even to the next state, right? But if it puts the power on the national grid, then it no longer becomes it now becomes the responsibility of NERC to license that entity and no longer the state. So everything about the state has to be curtailed within the territory of the state for it to be licensed and regulated by the state.
Not bad. All right. Ayo's got questions too. I think he loves... he's thinking about results too, like everybody else. Ayo.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Just one, two questions that I want to ask you, sir. What are the booby traps for states? I'm looking at a list of 9 agencies of the federal government that I don't know how effective or not they have been since 2005, almost 20 years now. There's NERC, you've been talking about NERC. There's a Transmission Company of Nigeria. There's NEMSA, Electricity Management Services. There's Electricity Liability Management Company. There is bulk electricity. What are the booby traps that states must avoid so we don't have the same kind of what a number of people have called complex systems, when they are setting their own systems to make electricity work for the people?
I would call them booby traps. I'll call them concerns, right? In terms of concerns, the first is your regulatory risk. And it's important that if the states do not set up their regulators properly, then you would have a challenge of attracting the right investors and investment into the state, which is why where states are now is trying to create effective regulators. The other concern that is there is the concern about the viability of state electricity markets. And that concern again dovetails into some form of regulation and the state electricity policy to make sure that people who are able to, people who are the low end of, people who are the lower end of the economy are able to afford electricity. So everything dovetails around the regulatory and legal and policy framework around the states, which is where the Nigerian Governors Forum now come in, because they now have a program called the National National Electricity Market Support Program. And it's a program that is managed under the auspices of the Nigerian Governors Forum and with very key stakeholders, including the federal government, the development partners like the World Bank, UKNAF, and all the rest, to start to build capacity, regulatory capacity, legal capacity, institutional capacity at subnational levels so that they can, states can drive their electricity markets. States may not need to replicate a TCN structure, but you would, if you would need to issue licenses, you would need to regulate businesses, you would need to set tariffs that are commensurate to what that are affordable, but at the same time provide a return to investors that will come in. You will need to cater for people who are at the lower end of the economy, making sure that they're affordable. I'm seeing meters on your screen. You need to make sure people are metered, right? So, but those concerns are being addressed because, or rather, those concerns are noted, and from a holistic level, the NGF is trying to make sure that states do not pass different electricity laws that make it unworkable for the federal government or for the federal electricity market to work. So harmonization of laws, alignment of laws and policies so that we don't have one state making a law that makes it impossible for TCN to bring power into their state because they made their laws are not aligned to what will make electricity flow naturally. So those concerns are there, and the national subnational electricity markets program has started running. We had a capacity building program over the last 2 days. It was organized by the NGF and with support from the UKNAF and the UK government. We had a lot of states in attendance, and it was a very clear eye-opener for the states. Look, this thing is very interesting, but these concerns need to be addressed. And they've gone back, they've taken note, they're going back to address some of these concerns.
I think they're very interesting. So moving forward, I mean, we'll look forward to a lot more of those kind of sessions so that lots of businesses and Nigerians can know what opportunities, what avenues exist for them to leverage on, because look, at this point where we're all thinking about how to cut costs and ensure that businesses stay afloat, I think this would be hugely significant if they can sort all of these things out. So yeah. Okay, well, thank you for coming on. So we'll look forward to more engagements with the NGF and the states as well. So, Ojo Nomofama, lead consultant, power sector to Nigeria Governors Forum. Thank you, and we wish everyone there all the best to ensure that things work.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll be back in a moment. That will be from Lagos.
Thank you so much for staying with us this morning. You know, we have and continue to talk about the number of out-of-school children over and over again at every opportunity we get. You know, but one of the consequences of that is what we found on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning, which left all of us here, Maokwe in particular, with her mouth agape. Reading the fact on the front page of the Guardian newspaper that 70 to 80% of victims of domestic and sexual violence are under 15 years. Under 15 years old. What are the consequences of this? What are the causes of this? What are the things that we can do to ensure that this doesn't happen? What happens in the immediate future and in the far future? That's the reason we have this morning Praise Fowowe, who is a family life professional. He joins us from Dallas, Texas in the U.S. Thanks for joining us this morning, Mr. Fowowe.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Ayo. Good to be here with you.
Thank you. I don't know how that story caught you, if you have been able to look at it. The fact that on the front page of that paper, 70 to 80% of sexual and domestic violence cases in Nigeria are children under 18 years old. In fact, I saw part of the story that says that the youngest of them is not even up to a year old.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that should be a surprise to me because, I mean, I used to function in that space many years ago, and I went around the country. I must have worked in like 13 states, and listening to young people, met a lot of 7-year-olds who were sexually active way back. Met 9-year-olds who were not just sexually active, who were addicted to sex, and quite a number of them were victims of child sexual abuse. And we did quite a lot way back, even though it looks like the law seems better. Looks like the Child Rights Act has been, passed into law in almost all the states right now. But it's not just about being passed into law, it's the will to enforce what the policies say. So I'm not totally surprised at the headline that you just read this morning, because it seems to me that our culture, and I'm culture in quote, in certain parts of the country, because if you trace the history of the Child Rights Act, you would know that initially when it was introduced, I think in 2002, before it was passed in 2003, there were sections of the country that stood against it because, again, they came from the side of religion, and before you knew it, it became political. But they were able to pass it. But even after then, before many of them could accent and sign it into law, it was like a tug of war. So when we have a society where we don't prioritize the best interest of the child, you will see all sorts. So I'm not totally surprised. Despite these laws, you can still see a whole lot of children who are serving as underage house helps across the country. So not totally surprised at the news at all.
And what also makes that sad is that a sizable number, just look at the screen right now, a sizable number of children are out of school. Look at the figures that we're seeing right there. Could this be part of the reason? Could this be this sexual and domestic violence we're talking about a blindside consequence of this situation of children out of school?
Yeah, it's just one of it, because a lot of the children are in school are also victims. The thing about us is that we have this culture of shame. So you have a whole lot of parents who don't even report. They don't even know what to do. I used to work in Nigeria at the time, working with a lot of young people, 480 of them, every week that I had access to for 7 years of my life. And not once did any of their parents show up to even check who was talking to them, to know whether I was a kidnapper, to know who I was. Sometimes they will even send the children when it's time for school fees. Oh, that's your teacher that was teaching you. Can he help with school fees and things like that? And I saw firsthand situations where, a child gets raped and then you report and police picks up the victim. Then parents come to say to you, oh, can we settle out of court? Can they just help us find like 100,000 or 50,000, and then we will bury the case and things like that. So yes, out of school children, about 20 million, it's very sad in this age and time. And at the time, even when we say that all the states have now signed the Child Rights Act into law, right? And we have 20 million children out of school. That's a gross violation of this act that we say we have passed into law, because it means that the best interest of the child is not being protected. And if you look at the Child Rights Act, 4 principles underpin that. Number 1 is non-discrimination, which means that every child must have the right, regardless of their gender, their race, their tribe, to maximize their potential at the highest level. Look at some states. You see children sit on bare floors, sit on tires. Even in some of the states, we can say have even done well. I remember that I contributed money to provide desks and chairs for a particular school in Ojodu in Lagos, and that's Lagos, right? Not to talk of all the states. And Lagos seems to be the state that has done, a whole lot of work when it comes to this issue. Number two of that is the best interest of the child, and we talk about the best interest of the child. If we're a nation that prioritizes the best interest of the child, we will not have, 20 million children who are out of school, because the number three of the principle is the rights of the child to survival and development, and that even talks about children who have some form of disabilities. Look at the way our schools are constructed. We don't have ramps, so the capacity of those children to maximize their potential at the highest level is already hampered with the construction, system in many of our schools in many states of the Federation, and the last one is the voice of the child, which says that you can't plan a program for the child without even hearing the child. How many, when adults in our country don't even have access to government officials, is he a child? We do a whole lot of International Children's Day. There are events, as far as I'm concerned. I used to cry about these things and say, let's stop doing events. Can we create intervention that we can measure? We're not interested in things that we can measure. We're just interested in events and photo ops, and we say, this first lady has done this, that first lady has done that, and then the cycle continues, a new government is in power, and then the same thing happens over and over again. Do we even sit down to ask, who is a Nigerian child? What plan do we have for the Nigerian child? If anything goes wrong with Nigerian, I live in Texas. Every time I hear, my phone beeps because a child has been kidnapped or someone, they can literally describe the kidnapper. They will track the person down, and you see it. So that's how you know when a people prioritize the best interest of the child. With 20 million children out of school is more than some African countries. In fact, many African countries. So when you have 20 million children out of school, we're sitting on a keg of gunpowder, and those children can be deployed to do anything and everything. And if you pay attention to what is happening on social media with the Generation Alpha and the Generation Z, you could literally see that things are falling apart with the content I even see, and the center is no longer holding, even from the parental side of things.
Listening to you right now, the consequence of these 20 million children out of school is so vast. As you said, a good number of people have also expressed that the kind of concern, including former President Obasanjo. But looking at, the issues you raised around, Child Rights Act, line up for me, if you can, the relationship between the Child Rights Act and then these Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act that a number of states have, which was passed in 2015, that a number of states have also adopted. And then Lagos State and as well as Ekiti State have protection against domestic violence law and the sexual and gender-based violence laws. How do these laws, this Violence Against Persons Act and sexual and gender-based, how do they align with the Child Rights Act?
Well, you see, our problem has not even been in enacting laws. Our problem has been in implementing. I read a lot of policies just yesterday, and I'm shocked at the content of the policies. And I'm saying, if a nation has got all this in place, you have these laws, you have this act in place, then you shouldn't be having this problem. For example, you have a child who is being well fed, right, with the right balanced diet, but then consistently you realize that there's kwashiorkor, right? You have the right to now question, are we sure this child is being fed? Are we sure the child is being fed with the right things? Because, this thing is garbage in, garbage out. If you do this, then you will have this consequence. But when you have the consequence and you claim you are doing this, then most likely you just have them on paper. And you know that we have committees upon committees. I can tell you for free, there is no state in Nigeria, for example, that can say that I've not written a paper to, I've not written proposals to, I've not raised a whole lot of noise about what else needs to be done when it comes to, because you can have this thing as laws, but who are the people to implement it? Are they even aware? I interact with some of the security agents. I interact with, some of the professionals in various ministries who are supposed to be implementing some of these things. And I'm shocked that they are clueless about even the position of the law about this thing. So it's not for lack of laws and acts. Because if you have, these two laws that you cited right now together, there is no way you should have 20 million children out of school if there is enforcement. But you have situations where our culture clashes with, so for example, let's take the age of the child. What is the age of a child in Nigeria? The Child Rights Act talks about, age 18, right? But you know that there are states who don't believe that, hide under religion to say, so you still have child marriage in some states of the Federation, depending on who is consummating that kind of marriage, right? If it's the poor in those states, people will make a lot of noise and maybe there will be consequence. But if it's the rich, right, everybody keeps quiet.
Okay,
so,
well, Mr. Forward, just one quick thing. In all of things that you are unpacking there, believe me, it's chagrin, but maybe as parents, you and I, we may not understand it the way women will do. So my colleague Malkwe has a question for you.
Yes.
And the passion with which you speak about children still comes through. I know a lot of things are wrong. Really, when we look at the statistics and when we look at even the front page of The Guardian this morning, which I already brought to your notice. But I want to know, as somebody who's advocated for children over the years and, advocated in particular for the Nigerian child, what are some of the low-hanging fruits that you think that we can implement that will immediately have great impact? Something that it's a no-brainer. Things that we can immediately do to show that we actually are showing some commitment to the Nigerian child.
Thank you very much, Malkwe. I think the first thing is the basic thing we can even do. Can we even provide adequate infrastructures in our schools, right, to start with? Can we even normalize the fact that no child should be out of school? I mean, that's within the reach of any government. I mean, you can't, for example, Lagos is a center of excellence, but there are schools, Ogun State is close to Lagos State. There are schools where children sit on bare floor, right? And you see children even walk around the streets and nobody is asking, why are you not in school, right? And so it has to be a handshake between government and even parents, right? So if you have a situation where, let's say child sexuality education, for example, that should be taught at home, right? I personally, I used to live in an estate in Nigeria. The first time I moved to that estate, I took responsibility. I begged all the parents, can you send your children to me? Because you say predators are everywhere right now. They've always been. But the shape of predators have changed a little bit. It's no longer just human beings. You now have nations. You now have systems. You now have sectors, right? And so you, on one hand, we say, oh, we don't want child sexual abuse in Nigeria. But you have musicians who sing content that you bring to children's events, right? And you know this content is not right for the child. And when you read, and I can tell you a classic case. There was a time I think Nickelodeon was coming to do an event in Nigeria, and there was a particular brand, that invited certain artists whose content was not in the best interest of the child, which was a gross violation of the Child Rights Act. I raised an alarm. We started trending it on social media, and I wrote to them to say, these people you have brought, right, are anti-children based on their lyrical content. And you know what they said to me? They said, Praise, if you can get 1,000 parents to write to us, we will drop them. And so we made a lot of noise. Parents, can you write to this particular corporate brand to say, hey, no. We couldn't get 1,000 parents, right? So you see that on one hand, everybody makes mouth, but when it comes to the nitty-gritty of the action, everybody, hands off. So basic thing, parenting, we have that within our control. We can do a lot of parenting education. There are several centers, for example, in Texas where you can go learn how to parent a child. And once you are negligent, they can actually withdraw the child from you. So if we strengthen the practitioners, and I love what Lagos State has done. In fairness, Lagos State, I think Lola is in charge of domestic violence prevention team. They have done incredibly well because their response rate is quite high. As at the last time I checked, I work closely with them. But that cannot be said of other states. Do you know that every time I get a case and people asking me, oh, this thing happened in this particular state in Nigeria, the first thing I'm asking is, who can we call? Who can we reach? We don't even know who to reach, except for some NGOs and agencies. So basically, basic thing, education. Can we ensure that our schools are standardized? Can we ensure the security of the child in our schools? That is within the reach of any government at all. But you see, that I just mentioned, we're not even doing.
Well, you know, I think one of the things that you also mentioned, which is very critical there, is parenting. And I'm trying to imagine a parent saying, look, I want to go to a parenting school. Well, maybe we'll have that conversation some other time. Principal is a family life professional. Thank you so much for your time and for illumination this morning.
Thank you.
Okay. Some of your own comments on this program this morning. Let's begin with this one from Hussein. Says, now that the Supreme Court has put a final closure on the 2023 presidential election, all encumbrances against him not to deliver on campaign promises have been removed. On electricity matters, former President Muhammadu Buhari signed into law a bill that will allow states to generate power in the country. We will reduce the power deficit if they maximize the full advantage of this opportunity.
Well, Professor Nakena is talking about Electoral Act. He says it should now be tweaked in a way that all elections in Nigeria are held 180 days ahead of swearing in to allow every adjudication processes to be concluded before winners of elections should or should not be sworn in. The electioneering litigations distract and obstruct the process of governance, and it is retrogressive as it is now. Presently, so many NAS elections have been vacated by some tribunals, and it's not doing our democracy any favors.
Well, Dele is concerned about children, the plight of children. He says, my issue is with parents that allow their kids below 10 to sit at the car front seat. Just yesterday, I saw a car along the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, close to where I is, where a child is standing close to the driver. It's imperative parents understand car seat safety, he says.
Indeed. So much for parents to learn. And even all of us as a community, I mean, what he was saying about the lyrics of songs in parties that children attend and places where children are is very, very important. We all need to pay attention to the things that are happening to children in our community. They say it takes a village. One person has a child, but it does take a village to raise those children.
That clearly says that we have to be deliberate about these policies. It's not happenstance. So if we're not, you know what to expect. Well, that is the show today. This lovely Friday morning, we do thank you all, as always, for letting us be a part of your day, your week. We'll see you again next time. I'm Chamberlain Usof. Goodbye.
Well, thank you for being a part of our village this morning. Thank you. I'm Malkwell Gunyus. Have a great weekend.
And let's always make sure that we grow this village called Nigeria. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend.